I was just seeing if the PowerPoint was coming up. That's what I was waiting for. If you have the yellow insert, that's the outline for today's message. And we're going to begin with Ecclesiastes 6:12, which really introduces the message. So I don't need an introduction on my own. We're going to let Ecclesiastes 6:12 be it. It says, "Who knows how our days can best be spent?" Good question. We're going to look at some observations from King Solomon on managing the seasons of life. And I'm going to be using the phrase seasons of life interchangeably with circumstances of life. And so I want to begin with some quotes on the circumstances of life. I thought these were important enough that I should put them on the outline so that you can have them. If I just read them, they'll be of minimal value. Even if they're up on the screen, you read them once and you kind of forget them. But if you have them written down, then you can look at them and be encouraged by them as I am. Number one, the greater part of our happiness or misery depends on our dispositions, not upon our circumstances. That was from the very First Lady. Number two, there is no easy way out of our circumstances. Sometimes you stick it out even when you want to give up, because you know that on the other side is either a better situation or a better you. Number three, Christ has accomplished your salvation, but He has not yet perfected your circumstances. Do not be confused in the two. Yes, He has perfected salvation, but our lives are not perfect. Number four, God has prepared our victory for us if only we will praise Him in all circumstances. Number five, when we start to understand God, we will be offended less and will react less to negative circumstances. Number six, we can't always control our circumstances, but we can control our attitudes. That's true. That is very true. 7, we must be more concerned with what we do, with what happens to us, than what happens to us. Number 8, you can't control circumstances. However, you can always control your attitude, approach, and response. Your options are to complain or to look ahead and figure out how to make the situation better. 9, my circumstances will sometimes be pleasant and sometimes be difficult. But teach me that the way I react to them is almost more important than the circumstances themselves. Renew my mind, Lord, and enable me to respond with joy and humility to whatever happens as Jesus did. Number 10, perseverance is one of the keys to overcome the adverse circumstances of life. In Ecclesiastes chapter 3, Solomon gives us 5 principles relating to the circumstances of life and how we deal with the circumstances of life. So we're just going to get into the first one. Number 1 is believe that God has a plan. Well, so this is not on the screen, so I'll go slow. Believe that God has a plan for both good times and bad times. Believe that God has a plan for both good times and bad times. Let me rephrase this in the form of a question. Do you believe that God has a plan for both your good times and your bad times? In Ecclesiastes 3, the chapter opens in verse 1 with this statement, "There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under heaven." Now what this says to us as Christians is that everything is happening according to God's timetable. The problem is that a lot of times his timetable is not my timetable. Usually my timetable, I want it to happen faster. I even want bad stuff to happen fast to me so I can start to get over it quicker. I don't even like the bad stuff to be prolonged. And so as he talks about life and the circumstances of life, he says that there are 28 seasons that we go through, 14 positive, contrasted with 14 negative. And I thought the best way for us to discuss these would be to put them in chart form so you can look at them. So he says there is a time there's a time to be born, and there is a time to die. That's right. There is a time to enter the world. There is a time to leave the world. And we definitely don't have any control when we enter the world. And generally speaking, I'm not talking about suicide, we don't control when we leave the world. So there's a time to be born, and there is a time to die. There is a time to plant, and there is a time to uproot. There is a time to put roots down and stay where you are. And then there is the time when you get uprooted, and usually you're uprooted at a time when you're not ready to make a change. There is a time to heal, and there is a time to kill. Now, let's talk about the kill for a minute. This is not talking about murder. We know murder is wrong. I don't even think it's talking about a soldier representing a government killing another human being, because war is mentioned down in verse 8. And so the only time I can think of, and there could be an exception to this, the only time that I can think of when an individual has a right to act on their own in killing another human being is in self-defense. In fact, in the Old Testament, the law for self-defense was laid down in Exodus 22, verses 2 and 3. If an intruder broke into your house at night, you could kill the intruder. If they broke into your house during the day and you killed them, you could be subject to a murder charge, depending on the circumstances. Exodus 22, verses 2 and 3. So there's a time to heal, and there may be a time to kill. There is a time to build, and there is a time to tear down. There is a time to laugh, and there is a time to weep. There is a time to dance, and there is a time to cry. What he's saying is that life is like a roller coaster. One day you are celebrating the birth of a baby, and then 3 days later you're mourning the loss of a loved one. And that's because life is a combination of good and bad, positive and negative, pleasure and pain. There is a time to gather, and there is a time to scatter stones. When a building was being constructed in Solomon's day, stones would be gathered, but not all of the stones would be used for various reasons. Some would be scattered and thrown away. So a time to gather and a time to scatter. There is a time to hug, and did you know there's a time to refrain? There is a time to compliment, and then there is a time to confront. There is a time to search, and then there is a time to give up. Now, the search part is easy. That is so easy. You know what's tough is when do you give up? That's the tough part. You've read the news stories about a person lost in the woods or lost on the water, and I guess if they're lost on the water, the Coast Guard has rules of engagement. Somebody's lost in the woods. When do you give up the search? When do you as a family say to the doctor, okay, we're all right, you can go ahead and remove our loved one from life support? When do you give up? There is a time to keep, and there is a time to throw away. Now the problem is some people can't throw anything away. And that's why it piles up in their garage and they can't park their car in their garage. And then they rent a storage area. I know this because I watched the Hoarders TV show for the 5 years or 6 years. You remember Hoarders? Did any of you watch Hoarders on A&E? It was like from 6 to 7 years. And it wasn't that I was watching it because I was into the hoarding. I was more into the psychology of the people and why this particular, what went on inside the people that triggered something that they absolutely could not throw anything away. And after analyzing the show for several years, I concluded that a lot of these people had gone through a very traumatic experience at some point in their life. Spouse died, child died, something triggered something, but sometimes you have to throw away stuff. There is a time to mend, and there is a time to tear. Yeah, mend and tear. In the Old Testament, sometimes you would tear your clothes as a symbol of grief. But then after the period of mourning was over, you had to get out the needle and the thread, and you had to mend your clothes back up. This next one you're going to like. There is a time to speak, and there is a time to be silent. The problem is we usually get the two mixed up. We usually speak when we should be silent, and we're usually silent when we should be speaking. There is a time to love. There's a time to hate. The Bible says that hate is sometimes an act of love. We're never going to hate people, but we do hate what people do. We hate prejudice, we hate injustice, we hate abortion. In Proverbs chapter 6, it says that there's 7 things that God hates, and there's 7 things that we ought to be hating too. So a time to love, a time to hate. There's a time for peace, and then there's a time for war. And sometimes war is the only alternative when tyranny is violating the most basic of human rights. And so the principle of these 28 seasons, 14 positive and 14 negative, is that we have to believe that God has a plan for both the good and the bad. Because in the same chapter it says that He has made everything appropriate in its time. It does not say everything is appropriate. It says God makes everything appropriate in its time. That is, He can bring good out of bad. He can bring beauty out of the ashes. All of your life is a part of His eternal plan. So number one, principle number one, is we have to believe that God has a plan for both the good times and the bad times, the 28 seasons of life. And then principle number two is trust God in confusing times. Trust God in confusing times. I'm even going to say it one more time because it's not on the screen, right? Trust God in confusing times. Trust God when there is no clear answer as to why something is going on in your life right now. And when I say trust God, I simply mean don't give up your faith in God. You can question God, you can complain, you can bellyache, you can moan, and you can groan. Just don't give up your faith in God, no matter how uncertain or confusing a situation is in your life. In Ecclesiastes 3:11 it says this: He has planted eternity in the human heart. Now I've studied the passage for a while. I'm going to share with you what I think it means in a few sentences. I don't think he has in mind the immortality of the soul. I don't think he's saying that every human being recognizes that he or she has an immortal soul that is going to spend eternity either in heaven or in hell. I think that he's saying that we, as human beings, have the capacity to understand things that transcend our physical world. You see, a dog is only interested in its next meal. It has no ability to comprehend anything beyond its own physical existence. And so even though as human beings we have the capacity to comprehend things greater than ourselves, does that mean that we know everything? You gave a good answer because you read ahead in the outline. Because the rest of the verse says, but even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. We have limited perspective. We cannot figure out all the ways of God. All we can see is the current situation. That's all that we see. God sees the end result. All you and I see is the ugly cocoon. Oh, ugly cocoon. God sees the transformed, beautiful butterfly. You and I aren't always able to see that because of our limited perspective. So I was thinking about this passage in John 13:7, and we're going to go deep on this one for a minute, all right? We're putting on scuba gear. We're not snorkeling now. And maybe I'm going a little bit deeper than intended. This is Jesus, and he's washing the feet of his disciples, okay? He says, Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." Why does God keep things hidden from us? That's my question. I mean, why doesn't he just tell them what he's doing? Why this big spill? You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand. Why not just tell them? Okay, that may be. I think sometimes we don't understand everything up front because God is reminding us that we have to continue to trust him even when we don't understand what's going on right now. Even though you don't understand what I'm doing right now, I know I'm washing feet, but that's not the point. Even though you don't fully understand, you will. There are some things going on in your life right now you don't understand. It doesn't make any sense at all. Because you're basically a good person. So why negative things are happening? But in the negative things, we still have to learn to trust God. This is 2 Corinthians 1:9. You remember the guy by the name of Paul who was beaten, stoned, shipwrecked, left for dead, hungry. He said, but this happened so we would not trust in ourselves, but in God, who raises people from the dead. So sometimes things happen that you can't explain. And you just have to say, I'm doing what I can, and I'm trusting God. That is, you're not giving up your faith. And when you affirm God's sovereignty, that is his ultimate control, then he's going to give you some level of inner peace and contentment. So trust God in confusing times. Those times when you don't understand what's going on in your life or why something is happening to you. Principle number 3 is utilize my time now, do good, and be active spiritually. Utilize my time now, do good, and be active spiritually. It says in Ecclesiastes 3:12, I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and do good while they live. And so the real good life is the life that is committed to doing good. Ephesians 2:10. God created us for a life of good works, which He has already prepared for us to do. My question is, are we doing what God created us as believers to do? It's important for us to utilize the present, do good, be active spiritually, because we are not guaranteed of tomorrow. Number 4 is appreciate all my time as a gift from God. This is very important. Solomon says this throughout Ecclesiastes. It's in the New Testament, book of Ephesians, that we have to appreciate our time and use our time wisely. Do you see your time as a gift from God? It says in Ecclesiastes 3:13, all of us should eat and drink and enjoy what we have worked for. It is God's gift. Your time is God's gift, and that's why He wants you to enjoy it as much as possible. Now that's going to vary from circumstance to circumstance, and how you enjoy life or how much you enjoy life may be more or less than somebody who lives in a different situation somewhere else in the world. But to the degree that you are able, enjoy what you have worked for. This is Ecclesiastes 11:8. However many years anyone may live, let them enjoy them all. Wow. What I think he's saying is that we need to live with an attitude of gratitude. And you can do that even in bad times, even in tough times. You can have an attitude of gratitude. In fact, in the New Testament, the parallel to this passage, in 1 Thessalonians, Paul says, give thanks to God in all circumstances, for this is the Lord's will. Now, it doesn't say, be thankful for the circumstances. Oh, I love these bad circumstances. They're great. No, but you can be thankful in the circumstance. Philippians 4:11. I have learned how to be content with whatever I have. And he wrote Philippians while he was in jail. But you know what I find really interesting about this passage? Is that for most of us, contentment has to be learned. For the most part, we're not born content. A few of you have the contentment gene, if there's a contentment gene. A few of you have it. But most of us have to learn to be content. And God may one day ask us, did you enjoy the life that I gave you? I know it wasn't perfect, because the world is not perfect. Or were you always complaining and griping and ungrateful? Did you learn contentment and find some level of peace? So appreciate your time as a gift from God. And then number 5 is anticipate giving Him an account of my time to God. And, that's right, it's not on the screen. Let me go again. I just read over that fast because I said, oh, they'll read it. Anticipate giving an account of my time to God. An account of my time to God. Now this is Ecclesiastes 12:14. It says, God will judge us for everything we do. So why would God judge me in the way that I use my time? Because time is your life. And when you waste your time, you are wasting your life. In fact, time is the most precious commodity that we have because it cannot be renewed. Do you remember 25 minutes ago when I said, good morning? That's never coming back. It's gone. Gone. 5 minutes ago when we were on point 4, principle 4. Gone. Gone forever. Gone. You use it and it's gone. Now this is Ephesians 5. This was written to the church in Ephesus. It's written to Christians. This is written to us. It says, live then with a due sense of responsibility. Not as ones who don't know the meaning of life. Come on, folks, you know the meaning of life. But as those who do. Make the best use of your time. So since you understand the meaning of life, you can live with a due sense of responsibility. And you get to choose how you use your time. But once you have chosen what you're going to do with it, you only get to spend it once, because that portion of time is gone. So I would like for you to look at the chart. I thought I had my outline up here. The yellow one. I'd like for you to look at the chart. I think it's all on one page. I tried to get it on one page. Okay. 28 seasons. 14 positive, 14 negative. Which of these seasons are you in right now? It's possible you could be in 14, 15, or 16 of these all at once. So don't think that you have to choose one or two. You could be in numerous seasons. So as you look at the chart, and as you think about the seasons of life or the circumstances of life that you're in right now, I would like to ask you 5 questions based on the 5 principles that we shared. Do you believe that God has a plan for both the good times and the bad times? I'm not asking, do you know what the plan is? I'm asking, do you believe He has a plan for both the good times and the bad times? Number 2, are you trusting God in the confusing times? Or are you thinking, well, maybe what's it worth? Don't give up your faith in God, no matter which of these seasons you are in. Even if you're in the time of weeping, in the time of crying, don't give up your faith in God. 3, are you utilizing your time now, doing good, being active spiritually as the Lord allows you to have decent health? Number 4, are you appreciating your time as a gift from God to enjoy? 5, are you reminding yourself that you will give an account to the Lord for what you have done with what He has given you? So as you're thinking about these seasons of life, I would like for each of us to evaluate ourselves in this moment. And by the phrase "in this moment," I mean at this stage of life that you are in. Whatever you're going through right now, whatever you're dealing with financially and relationally and spiritually and physically and employment-wise, could be a number of things going on. Number 1, ask yourself, what can I learn in this moment? Is there something I can learn? Can you learn something in your life situation right now? And everybody's is a little different. 2, what good can I do in this moment right now? Is there some good that you can do to someone else? Or maybe you can just praise God and show an attitude of gratitude. 3, what can I enjoy in this moment? What can you enjoy in this moment of your life? What is there that you can be grateful for? And number 4, will I continue to trust God in this moment? Even in the most confusing, illogical, irrational situation that's going on right now, will you continue to trust God and not give up your faith in Him? I love the book of Job. I've often wondered, why did God put this 42-chapter book, 42-chapter book in the Bible called Job, about a guy named Job who suffered? It's in the Bible to tell us that even when things happen that you don't understand, and he didn't understand what had happened to him, his 10 children were all killed, his cattle were taken, his land was possessed by others, he was stricken with some type of a disease from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet. He had a lot of questions, a lot of uncertainties, a lot of confusion. But there's one thing that he never did, and that is give up his faith in God. And you're not going to give up your faith in God either. I don't care how confusing it is. Do not give up your faith in God. And you're not. And that's one of the reasons why you're here. You're hanging in there. And that's what's so beautiful, to see your faith. And to see your faith over the years. To see the things that you have been through. And yet you have never given up on the Lord. In 2 Corinthians 6:2 it says this. This is the Living Bible. I thought the paraphrase would be appropriate. It says, right now God is ready to welcome you. Today He is ready to save you. I like that. You know why I like it? Because if you're waiting for perfect conditions, I promise you it will never happen. You know, you just all these, well, as soon as and then you have to fill in the blank. As soon as you get the new job, as soon as you get the right relationship, as soon as your children leave home, you've got all these ifs. Then, if and then, it's right now. Right now is the time. The Lord says He wants you to come to Him, confess Him as Lord, repent of your sins, be baptized by immersion. We have a baptistry right over here, and the water's warm because I stuck my hand in it this morning. So it's ready. And God is ready to receive you. And you need to do it because it is the right thing to do. And if you do that, God doesn't promise you wealth. He doesn't promise you power. He doesn't promise you prestige if you get those things fine. What He does promise is to give you the inner strength, the inner power through His Spirit to handle any situation that comes your way without you giving up your faith in Him. And you want that. And I want that. But He has given us free will. He's given us choice. It's a decision you have to make. And we are here to help you. We are here to assist you. So David is going to lead us in our invitation hymn. And if you have a particular need, please let us know what it is while we stand and sing.